Hopefully so. So what are we going to really like? Why did I create this webinar? As I briefly explained earlier as well, there's a lot of companies who are wanting to get into the gamification marketing scene. There's a lot of kind of ideas around it, but there's not a lot of information on how can you start and what are the things that you can actually create. So in this webinar, I'll try to mainly give you the kind of overall background of why should you maybe be interested in, why should you want to use it, or this concept of gamification marketing. But more importantly, I will go through specifically some case studies and also kind of explain what was done, what was achieved, and then give some my own ideas as well. So as I mentioned, small introduction, 5 case studies, and then I will actually build during this webinar, I will build one example as well that you can kind of follow along of how this kind of solution can come to life. And then if you're interested, then you can always reach out. We can do a specific example based on your use case and your company, exactly like I'm building an example during this webinar. So to kind of kick things off and to kind of start with this, then the introduction on gamification and the gamification marketing, there's 2 different types of gamification marketing that we normally focus on. So it's the ideas that you can gamify the content that you put out there. So if you write some content, you have like a marketing message, you have any sort of slogan or anything, then you create a solution where your visitors or the readers of that content can interact with it. So the way that they can interact, kind of jumping forward, the way that they can interact is either they would try to memorize what is the parts of your message. They may want to sort, or like you may want to ask them to sort specific parts of that message, for example, in order of priority. You may ask them a question and they could guess what is the answer, and the answer could be found in your content. Or you can ask for a specific opinion from all the information that you're providing. There's actually more different ways, and I will show you specific examples later on. And then there's the second part of gamification marketing, which is specifically game-based marketing. So that is where you will take the message, or you will take your product, for example, and you put that product into a playable game. So this game can involve specific types of interactions. For example, a person has to run, if you are, for example, a battery company like a Duracell, then the game will be the Duracell bunny will be running and then collecting something. You can maybe aim is the mechanics of the game. You shoot bubbles. You can catch something. So the purpose of the game will be, objects are falling down. And those objects may be, if you have a drink, then those objects that are falling down can be the flavors of your drink. And the thing that is catching them is your specific drink, right? So there's 2 kind of different types of interactive and gamified content. And in this webinar, we're mostly focused on the first part, which is how can we turn that content into an interactive one. And as I mentioned earlier as well, on January, probably, I will have a specific webinar covering the specifically game-based marketing. So if you're interested in this as well, then keep your eye out on the notifications. I will probably launch the next webinar pretty soon. But the key word here, which I've also highlighted in red, is the keyword is the interact, right? So the crux of the entire gamification marketing concept is, can you produce something that your audience can interact with, right? It doesn't get any more complicated than that. If they can interact with it, then we can follow the gamification principles. The interaction can also be, if you have a wheel of fortune, for example, and people click on it to start spinning, then this is also an interaction. But also, the memorizing and the sorting and everything. So why does it work? Why is the kind of, what is the kind of logic behind it? And this is a little bit my own interpretation based on my experience of doing gamification for over 10 years. So the interactivity is the kind of core glue piece that ties together the feedback and the focus. And what I always like to say is games and interactions are the only place where a person has to have the entire full focus in order to actually take part, right? So if you watch a video, if you read a book, then these are all like non-interactive experiences. Or if you read some website, this is just one way, and this doesn't require your all focus. You can easily read through a book, like a page in a book, or you can easily watch a movie for 10 minutes and then kind of forget what did you just do. But if you have an interactive layer upon it, then it is impossible to zone out, right? It's impossible to play a game without realizing that you're playing a game. And the second part is the feedback. So this is also very kind of important topic for the entire gamification or interactive marketing, meaning that every time someone interacts with it, then your solution will provide them some sort of feedback, right? So if it is a question that they have to get right or wrong, then as soon as they pick that question, they get to realize whether they score points on it or maybe they lost points on it. As the kind of saying goes, that life is the worst game of them all, because we don't give each other, like, we don't give ourselves feedback, and life doesn't give you feedback on its own. We always have to work on the feedback, and the mechanism that gives you feedback is the gamification, right? So it's also important to know that the feedback, it's one layer on top of it that I don't have on the slide, is the feedback is the only thing that generates emotions, or this entire interactivity is the only thing that creates emotions, and the emotions are the only thing that is required to create memories. So that is why interactive experiences are remembered for a very long time. Usually when we have customer demos and some person says that, yes, I have seen a gamified experience before, then they recall something that they saw like 6 months ago, because taking part in it created emotion and you remember it. And that is a very important part when you're talking about brand awareness or marketing in general. Do people remember your message? So what are the average results that we have been seeing? We have launched well over 1,000 campaigns, and the average campaign completion, for example, is 95%. So that means that out of 100 people who start taking part of an interactive experience, 95% of them will go from start to finish to take part in all of it. So if you compare having a landing page with a bunch of information, then what is your expectation of how many people read through it word by word? It's definitely not 95%, I can tell you that. But in our cases, and I'll show you the actual cases as well later, we have around 95%. So the second very important factor is the bounce rates. So if you put your message out there, then there's no kind of benefit to it if people, open it and leave within, a couple of seconds without actually familiarizing themselves with it. And that is why if you're doing Facebook ads or something and you have a very good click-through rate, so people are clicking on it and you're paying for each click, then it's pretty bad if they click on it and you have to pay for them and they leave without actually getting that information that you wanted. So the click doesn't mean anything. It only means that can you capture them after the click. So the whatever happens after the click, that is important. And in our cases, most people just don't leave. So the engagement length, if you can imagine how long is an average attention span right now, if you're scrolling through TikTok, scrolling through Instagram videos or whatever, then it is 1.7 seconds. It's 1.7 seconds attention that you can get on average. But in our cases, it's 5 minutes, right? If you have any sort of interactive experience that go from start to finish, then on average, people spend around 5 minutes in total interacting with it. And that is over the course of several different times. So one person on average spends around 4 to 6 times they come back and do it again. And the last one is the discount redemption. The discount redemption means that if you give out any discounts as a price for those interactions, then up to 80% of them can get redeemed. So this is highly variable based on what are you giving, who are you giving it to, and what's the value. But we have seen very high discount redemption as well. So let me give you a little bit of an explanation here as well, why those numbers are like this. So I'm not pulling them out of a hat. These are all our own case studies. And the reason why, the first one, which I like to say, why is completion rate so high? If you do like a quiz or a game or whatever. So it's like the Newton's first law says that the object in motion stays in motion, which basically means that it's, of course it's paraphrasing here, but basically means if someone starts doing something and they want to know how it ends, then it's quite difficult to actually stop midway through. Because if you're stopping midway through, then you're basically saying that, I don't care what happens at the end. I'm not involved. I don't want to know. So I'm fine losing all of my progress that I already made. And this doesn't happen very often. Even if you have like a simple trivia game with like 7 questions, and if you answer first 3 of them and you quit midway through, then it's like you lose the commitment that you did within the first 3 questions. So you are more kind of suggested, or you're more kind of inclined to see it all the way through. Second, why the bounce rates are really low is the gamified experiences are the only experiences that allow you to use this kind of a challenging copy, which means like, play and win, or challenge yourself, put your skill to the test, can you achieve over X amount of points? So these are all those kinds of copies that if someone already clicks and goes to that site, then they go in order to kind of test whether they can play and win and whether they can challenge themselves. So they don't click just to kind of quickly glance, but they're clicking to actually see what the fuss is all about and then continue on kind of the interactions itself. And then why are so many discounts and coupons used if we are using an interactive engagement? That is because if people earn something, then they don't want to lose what they've already earned. So it's a very kind of popular knowledge regarding the kind of loss aversion. So basically loss aversion would mean that kind of gaining something will make you a little bit happy, but losing something will make you a way more sad, right? The amount of sadness that you will experience if you would lose something in relations to the happiness is around 2 times larger. So that is why if someone would give you something for free, then you don't value it that much. But if you have to work for it, then you value it more likely. And if you're not going to use it, then if you're not going to use it, then you feel like you're losing whatever you just earned. So that is why in interactive experiences and gamified experiences, the percentage are much higher. So we also have this kind of a concept of if you do not give a discount at the end of the game, but just info of buying, will that work? And if so, then at what percentage? So it's very, it's the good old answer is it depends as always. But first of all, yes, it works if the entire experience makes sense to be taken apart of. We will need to get into a very specific example for a very specific product or a very specific company for me to be able to give you a better percentage or better answer. But if you're not giving out anything at the end, then the reason why would someone want to play has to be kind of logical. One example will be, you do a quiz dedicated specifically to test niche knowledge of an audience, right? So people are not participating because of the reward. They are participating to challenge themselves to see if they knew all the answers. So compared to, you do a quiz on a specific product. There's also the question of what type of game is more engaging, the easy one that is easy to walk through or a hard one that provokes to continue playing. That is a very good question, because one thing that people do not really are very afraid of doing is to challenge the players and create a little bit of a more difficult experience. I will say that the one that is a little bit harder works better. If it's too easy, then the drop-off is too large. People understand that it's just kind of a baiting mechanism or whatever. They don't enjoy it. But the challenge is something that really keeps on, makes people engaged. So when we're talking about interactive quizzes and trivia games, what are the specific examples that we're talking about? So here I listed out a couple that we have been using, that our clients have been using, and I'll go through some of these examples here. And I also have a bunch of case studies that I can show you in a couple of minutes, how those specific experiences were used. But to kind of glance over them, we of course have the simple trivia game, right? So the trivia game will be you asking, or your company asking, specific questions, and some of the options are correct and some of them are not correct. So you kind of challenge the people to find the correct answers. Now, those answers can be like, or those questions can be audio questions, they can be picture questions. The options themselves can show images or just text. But the object is to kind of ask and see how many of the questions can a person get correctly. So overall, my tip will be to use not more than 7 questions. Like 9 or 10 is the maximum. And in that case, you will need to have a very specific niche theme. But around 7 questions is optimal. And in that case, you will also kind of, if you create a challenge for the discount, then I will suggest having at least 3 questions correctly being the lowest benchmark. So there's also the multiplayer trivia, which is similar to Kahoot, where just several people can play at the same time. The multiple path quiz is a little bit like directed selling or guided selling, but we actually have seen it being used for, the concept is you will ask a question, and depending on how people answer, the next question can be different, or the next result can be different. So it's kind of a word, or sorry, it's kind of a, like a flow chart to set up. But then depending on how people answer, they get a personalized experience. So the swipe poll, I have a case study on this. I will show you in a second, which I really like, is where you ask a question, but people answer it just like if they were like in a Tinder game. So they would swipe left or right if they agree or not, or disagree. This is a really good solution if you want to have people answering or giving their opinion on a lot of different things, because people can really quickly give their opinion on, even 20 different things. So you got a lot of things you want to ask. Do this kind of a swipe poll, works really great. The battle is if you will ask a question and you will show different types, or you will upload like 40 different images or 20 different images, and then 2 of them get randomly paired together, and then people have to choose or like answer the question either A or B, right? So this creates this kind of a competition of which of these will kind of rank the highest. It's great for feedback gathering, but it's also great for kind of this, creative marketing. For example, during Christmas time, you will ask, which type of a product would you rather have on your Christmas table? And you will showcase all of your different products. It will also give you very good insights on how people guess and how people give their opinions. We also have the personality test. I mean, the personality test, it's one very commonly used. It's the idea that everybody answers through the same questionnaire, but depending on how they answer, then the end result is personal to them. So very often used in e-commerce, and overall very good solution. So the Wordle challenge, which I also really like, it's inspired by the New York Times Wordle challenge. It's also been used during Easter a lot. And if you want to have like very high retention and people coming back to your website or your application, then you can, same thing, you can do a daily Wordle challenge, and then ask like, what is today's Christmas related word, or what is today's Easter related word. I have a case study on this as well. I'll show you later. It's very good if you want people to coming back, and then just having something little extra. The word maze, where people will find the correct words in a specific maze. So the prediction game, which I will actually build later on as well, is you will ask predictions of what do you think, what are the correct answers. And then later on, once you know the answers, you will mark what are the correct ones. You can use it really creatively. So in prediction games, you can even ask like, you can show a picture of a picture filled with candy, or like a bowl filled with candy. And it's, having people guess how many candies are in the picture, right? So you can even use it in offline in your store. So people will come into the store, they will see this large bowl of candy, and then they will enter the number of what do they think they are. And then later, then you can count them up or just wait them in and submit what is the correct answer, and then the system calculates the winners based on their guesses. And lastly, the gamified surveys, which is a little bit of a different topic because here we mostly focus on the results. So the thing that really differentiates our gamified surveys from all the other like Google Forms and so on is the fact that you also get all the answers while people are playing, not just when they submit their final answers. So even if someone stops midway through, you still get all the answers. So these are the kind of some example interactions that you could use if you're thinking of using those gamified interactive quizzes and trivia solutions. So what is the kind of quickly going over it, the actual benefits are like compared to, I get often asked like, but what is the specific conversion rate or how many clients will eventually buy my product because I have a trivia game and so on. So mostly we are focusing on the very high-end engagement, and we're focusing on very good retention, people coming back. And I will ask like a couple of example questions. So if you're doing an interactive solution, then you have people focusing on over 5 minutes on the message that you're giving out there. If you're not using an interactive solution, then people will just scan through the text at around 50 seconds at tops, right? So of course you will, want to have people more focused and to learn all this, all the message that you're putting out there. Second of all, those, as I mentioned, those interactions are played through and shared constantly. So one person can easily take part like 30 different times. So if you could have the same investment and you're thinking, should I do a gamified or interactive solution? Then on the same investment, you can either choose if you have like 5,000 people visiting your site 10,000 times, or you have 5,000 people visiting your site 200,000 times, then of course, 200,000 times is better. It's better for the SEO. It's better for your page exposure. It's eventually a numbers game. The more they come back, the more likely the visitors are to kind of explore further in your page. So it's definitely great numbers in terms of engagement. Also, as I mentioned before, how long is your message remembered? So when you're scrolling through the banners as Facebook or advertisement or whatever, then people rarely, if ever, remember the last banner advertisement that they saw when reading the newspaper or something. But as I mentioned, in those gamified solutions, people remember what they did 6 months later down the line, because they interacted, that created some emotion, and that created a memory. So very good for brand engagement. So let me go through some of the case studies. And I specifically chose the first case study because there's a lot of companies who are thinking like, we cannot do gamification because it's too childish, or our audience doesn't really vibe with gaming and so on. So this is a really strong myth. We have customers from public sectors, from private sectors, from telecoms to brands, to actually entire cities using gamification. So in that first case study, we have specifically a political party who wants to educate people on their electoral promises and stances. So my question when I saw this first kind of premise that they wanted to achieve with our software was, can it get any more boring? Like can the message that you're trying to put out there be any more boring than it is, right? It's a political promises before election. But of course, I know for a fact that when you're using interaction and gamification, then you're getting better results. So what they did, and I'll show you exactly a working example as well. So what they did, they created a Jeopardy game, right? And this Jeopardy game had 3 different topics. And those 3 different topics are 3 different kind of areas that they want to reform when they're being elected. Now you will see there's over 6,000 unique people who participated, and 50% of them played more like twice. And the average time someone spent on that game was 230 seconds, right? So that means that on average, each person spent 230 seconds, which is like 4 minutes, going through one by one the promises, trying to get the high score. So that's where we talk about the thing called head fake. people are thinking that and are aiming to get the high score because maybe the high score will put you higher on the leaderboard. But what you're actually doing is learning the message. So let me actually show you exactly how this interaction worked. So I will share my screen and I will show you this example here. So this was this kind of a quiz page. It's also a lead generation form. And the reason why there was only 9,000 players is, as you can see again, if I play here, I have already played this day. So you can only play once per day to increase your score. And you can also see that the top players will be able to win a trip to Brussels. So if I go through the game, my leaderboard name was already in use. So as you can see, these are the questions, the topics. So if I go here and choose education 100, I will get a specific question. Now I'm focusing on this specific question and I'm reading it and I'm trying to get it right, which also means that I'll kind of more likely to remember it. So I'll go through the entire game and then I get a score to be placed on the leaderboard, right? So this is one example of how even companies like companies like political parties can use gamification. So we have another case study going through a brand to ask, can't see the page. I hope if anyone else didn't see the page, then I can go back and share it again. Yeah. So if a brand wishes to ask people which product should return to the stores, right? So it's a simple premise. I mean, it's a specific marketing campaign. Like there's a potato chip company. There's a bunch of brand products that are now out of line. And the audience could vote for what could come back. And initially they tried to do it and maybe thought of doing it through like Google Forms and you get a survey. But as I always like to say, Google Forms, using those things is basically standard of high school surveys. Oh, I know. Oh, let me show you the actual game. Let me go back to this and I'll show you the game again. So here, sorry. So this was the game experience that I showed you, where you will first get the lead generation form, where it will check whether we've already played today. And then once you go into the game, you'll see this kind of a Jeopardy game, which has 3 different topics: the economy, education, politics. And if you choose like education 100, you'll get the question. You're focusing on this specific question, reading and trying to get the answer correctly. So if you get it correctly, you get 100 points. If you will get it wrong, you will lose 100 points. So once you go through all those questions, then you will be placed on the leaderboard to see how well did you do. It also takes into consideration the time, how quickly you answered all those questions. So it's this kind of a game-like experience. I think you should have been able to see the example now. Good. So going to the second case study that we have is, as I mentioned, a brand wanting to have voting of which product should return. But if you're going to do a Google Forms, it not only looks awful, it doesn't look any branded, but there's only one answer per person, right? One person just votes for one specific product. So what can you do? So this specific company created the same swipe game, like the Tinder game, right? So you can vote on which flavor should return. Now, the beauty of it is if you're voting like this, then as I mentioned, you can have a lot of different things to vote on, and people will go through the entire game giving their opinion on each and every one of those options. As you notice, the game completion is 99%. So 99% of the people who started voting gave their vote to each and every one of them. There's also 18,000 unique leads, but it's actually three weeks in a row. So there's each week you had 18,000 unique leads. And 80% of them return the next week again to give their vote. So they basically cut off the top 10, top 5, and top 3. And at the end, you could also see the leaderboard. So let me also now show you how this example worked. So let me share my screen again. This time I know how to do it a little bit better. So here, this is the example. So it's very automatically translated, so the English is not the best. It's actually a Latvian campaign. So here, again, they will ask for their lead information, the email, and their name. And if you begin, then you swipe right if you want the product to return to the store, right? Or you can swipe left if you not. So if you go through all of those options, let me go through all of them. As you can see, it doesn't take me a lot of time to go through them, but it's actually a fun interaction as well, because you're now also wondering what is the next option. And here you can also see the top flavors are run. So currently I just gave my first vote. So this gives the leaderboard of all the products and how many times have they been voted right or left. But this was my first playthrough, so only those have been voted 100% of the time to the right. So this is also a very good example that I like, this kind of a creative use of gamified marketing. We also have the next case study. So to increase the brand awareness through an educational competition. So brand awareness is a tricky thing. So it's very hard to measure. It's actually impossible to measure. With the brand awareness, you can only rely on whether people remember you and what are the chances of them reacting to your content that you put out. But if you actually create a challenge about it, then people are a little bit more invested into learning what it's all about. So what was happening? So a Crab, a UK company, created a quiz. So of course, there's a different level here. Giving up to $10,000 in prizes. It was not cash; it was on products. But basically, at the end of the campaign, you were ranked based on how many questions you got correctly and how quickly you got them correctly. In that case, you get 57,000 unique leads who went through the entire quiz, who did together 220,000 gameplays. Now the game completion, again, 90% of each gameplay, and we're not talking about 90% of 56,000, we're talking about 90% of 220,000 went through each and every question and tried to do it again and again and again to get a better score. And again, a slight head fake. You are actually learning about the product. So in their case, the bounce rate as well was only 14%. So most people who went there, and 14% bounce rate is really low. Most people who went there took the quiz, 90% that they finished, and they played 4 times on average. There's also over 2 minutes of gameplay time and the learning time actually for the campaign. So again, I can quickly show you how did it work here. This one was here. So here you get, it was quite recent, and it was also playable in the application, so just promoting an application. So you put your name in the leaderboard and your email. I think I've already maybe played. Nope. So it gives you the rewards, what can you win? And when you start the quiz, it actually, one thing you can notice, if you go through the quiz, it also gives you the progress bar, which is one very good thing why people are not quitting midway through, because now I would lose this amount of progress. So I'll go through the game. And here, so this is, again, I'm the only player playing because it's a fresh campaign. So I'm currently ranked 1. I can now take the quiz again. And as you can see, the questions are different, right? So they actually uploaded hundreds of different questions, but every time someone plays, you only get randomly like 7 questions per random, or 10 questions, right? So if I improve my score, I'll get higher. If I didn't, I'll use the same previous high score. Good. So what else do we have here? We have, I just wanted to kind of emphasize this concept again, that if you know, as I mentioned on the previous example, you get 220,000 gameplays. If you imagine doing the same thing that is not an interactive quiz, you will not get 220,000 gameplays. And actually the website visitors are much higher, because if it's not interactive, people don't have a reason to come back. People don't have a reason to play several times. So yeah, it's a very strong argument. And next 2 case studies are actually very similar. I've kind of put them together. So if you would want to like even promote a location or an event or a city, which is not even a product, and like how can you still use gamification here? So first of all, usually the first things that come to mind are only very large and expensive projects. So usually they involve like large agency creating some, tens of $1,000s worth of a campaign. But you can also do something creative. You can do as City of Oulu did. So I also have an example here, I think. So I will have to find this example from another place. So let me show you how it works. Share my screen. I don't know if the sound is up here as well, but basically you have this page that was integrated into their website. It is in Finnish. So if you start the game, and the campaign is quite old now, so it has to reload all the images again. But now you have a video where someone answers a question, and now the video stops to ask you, what do you think? Maybe, I don't know Finnish, but it actually asks you about Finnish language. What does it mean? And if you give your answer, then the next video is the show. So you can ask your questions in the video. So this campaign worked really well as well. As we can see here, let me stop sharing here. So this campaign had, just in 2 days, you had 3,000 views. But what I really want to focus on is if you launch the video, then usually what is the length of time that people watch your video? So it's definitely not 65% who go from 0 to 100 to watch everything, but this happened here. Also, because on average, we get only 8 seconds that people would want to watch a video. So this was actually around 2 minutes, or actually longer, so 4 minutes. So on average, people spent 158 seconds, which is 3 minutes in those videos. They wanted to know what's the next question, so I actually focused and went through all of those questions. And on average, you get 4 replays as well. 15% of all the people who watch through, at the end of the video, they click through to go to explore further information about the city as well. And a very similar thing, but not a video trivia, is also what a city of Tartu did. So in that case, they created a personality test. So which basically asked, if you answer through all of those questions, then which part of Estonia would you, or which part of southern Estonia are you from? So different parts of southern Estonia will kind of display, show different characteristics, where you could take the quiz and then it will get a personal answer based on how did you answer, a personal result based on how did you answer. So it had 20,000 visitors with 75% completion rate. And again, you see over 2 minutes of people kind of interacting with it. But most importantly, this was done for lead generation. So we had 6,500 new signups for their newsletters and stuff. Again, let me quickly show you. So how does the personality test actually works? So here you had questions here. Again, you had a lead generation form. See, this is not mandatory to subscribe. So when you go here, you go through those questions, right? So what kind of music creates the best food, best mood, and so on. It's kind of like characteristic questions, a little bit like entertainment value, which is kind of a little bit funny questions as well. And once you go through all those options, then it shows you the result. And if you can have already read through the result, then you can also share the results and go to the actual program page. And if you share the results on Facebook, or you can take the test again, right? So also something that works really well. Right. So I guess one of the very strong message that I have, or kind of the way of thinking about those experiences and gamified experiences, is that you can calculate all your conversions, and of course you should calculate all the media spends and the conversions specifically if you're in like e-commerce area. But when you're focusing on gamification, you would really want people to experience something, because that is what your customers are talking about. If no one is out in a pub having a beer and then talking about that company's conversion rates on Facebook, unless you are working in that company or you're specifically a marketer. But an average person can strike up a conversation of, did you see that campaign where they created a Tinder game where you can give votes, right? So this is what the customers are talking about, and this is what really gets the conversation going, and it's a very valuable thing. So there is also a question of how does the tool connect to an existing CRM softwares. I haven't actually gone through the entire tool yet, but I can easily show it to you in a second. Simple answer is, it's not a yes or no question, but it just connects. It's very easy. You press a button and you're connected to the CRM softwares. But as I mentioned, there's also a live example I wanted to put together, and one that I didn't show you before, but this is one of our latest additions. Like if you would want to create a prediction game, what will it mean? And if you would want to create any of these examples yourself, what will it mean? Where can you start? So I can tell you, you don't have to get a developer on it. You don't have to get an entire project team going. If you are interested, we could probably have it run and done by tomorrow. So that's, let me kind of show you what I mean. And I believe it can be interesting to kind of see how those things are built up. So let me take the same software that we have here, and I'll create a new campaign. And here, there's a bunch of different experiences I could choose from. All those games, those puzzles, lottery games, interactive videos, all of them. But I'll right here focus on this prediction game. So I'll create a new prediction game for the webinar. So as you can see on the right, I'll see exactly my preview, my default setups. So I can go through the next question. So these are just questions that we loaded for you first. So here it's focused on predicting scores on like a football match. But I can completely customize it. First of all, I can customize the entire game. Second of all, I can customize the entire landing page. So first of all, let me just, I took a couple of images here. So I'll do a prediction game on the upcoming Euro Cup, right? So I'll upload the background here to be a little bit more suitable. And this Adact logo, you wouldn't want to promote our company. You probably still want to promote yourself. So you can just click on any of these elements here. You can add new elements. I'll change the logo to the actual logo of the Euro Cup. Now again, it's, as you can see, it's way too large. I don't have to go back to the designer to ask, can you please make it smaller? I can just make it smaller here. In the text, again, I don't have to, go back and forth with the developers. I can just edit the text to say, take part in our Euro 2024 prediction campaign. So there's a lot of different functionalities. I'm not going to go into it, but the most common questions: can I get rid of the registration form? Can I add new fields to the registration form? Can I ask the information later? So the answer to all of them is yes, you can have a leaderboard. And I'm happy to kind of showcase it later on in a more detailed way. But I will also want to create the game itself, right? So I can add a new question to the game, and I can just add, let's predict a number. Let's predict how many goals will Messi score, right? Let's add a ±1 is the correct answer. So if I add this question, and I can get rid of all the other questions, right? So now I have this, how many goals will Messi score? If the text is too small, I don't like the colors, I can just go in here and make the text a little bit larger. Make the maybe background color is not the purple, not the bluish that I want to. Oh, sorry, the text color. This can be black, but the choice is background, maybe something like this. So let me add one more question. Let's add, what will be the score between Argentina and Germany? So left is Argentina and right is Germany. I can have more of these, but I'll just ask one, right? So I'm really bothered by this blue color that I added here. I think it's ugly, so I'll change it. So now I have like two questions. I can add more, of course. I can add a progress bar to kind of illustrate how far are you into the prediction game. But actually, I'll just publish this campaign. And it is ready. I can now go to the preview. This is the entire, I can direct people here. I can embed this to my landing page. I can embed this to my application. I can add a widget to my website. I can have a QR code in a conference where people can participate on their own devices. But all this information that I ask here how many calls will Messi score? I think it's gonna be like 13. And the scores, I should have added the colors as well to be a little bit darker. So let me finish this quiz. It also shows the thank you page that I can edit. And now I can later go back to the game and submit what are the correct answers if I know them. Meanwhile, in the analytics, I'll see exactly how many unique leads have already played, how many games are started. And in the game analytics, I can actually see what are the predictions that people have been making. So here I can see that people are predicting 13. I can see that, most popular is 2-1 to Argentina. Sorry, Germany. So I can get all this analytics as well. Now I can already publish this, but if I would want to, I can create the same design, but use another game, right? So I will do a template for this and decide that what if I would want to do a Jeopardy game instead? So I will create a new campaign. I will create a Jeopardy campaign. Now I already have the designs, which is the webinar. And as you can see, all this information is already done. If I want, I can edit it. But in the game, I can just choose new topics, like Euro. I can change the visuals of all this game from here without any coding. And I can just submit what I want those questions to be. And the same idea, if I add those questions, launch the campaign, direct people here, fill in their forms, and I have the campaign ready. So that is why we don't need to have a custom, very dedicated development team. There was also a question of how can you integrate it with your CRM. Sorry, you're here. You can just go to integrations and connect to whatever CRM you want to, right? So there's a lot of different examples that I can very easily show you, and the way that we kind of come up with new ideas or guide companies how to create those campaigns is you can easily have a call with us, and it doesn't cost you anything, and we'll just give you ideas. What could you do? You don't have to use our software. You can use whatever other software. You can even custom develop the solution, but we're here to kind of help you in also kind of like we would love to see a world where more companies will be creating such solutions, because we do see that they are working really well. If you're doing, you're a city that wants to do bring awareness, or a company that wants to bring awareness to recycling, we can easily come up with like a game that focuses on recycling, and that is completely your branded, that you can use to generate better results. So from my side, I had my colleague's name there. From my side, I kind of have finished talking everything that I wanted to talk about. If you have any further questions, right now will be a great time to ask them. I can give you, even if you have a specific product or a specific company and you would want to get some ideas, then just let me know. Otherwise, there's also, if you go to our website, arac.me, or just email me, kailev@arac.me, then you can book a call, and you can have a call with me directly, and separately and privately. There is a question that I actually really like. Can you combine separate kinds of quizzes into one campaign, have one leaderboard that captures points from those different quizzes? So this is a yes and a no question. So if you would want to have it automatically, then in that case, you would also have to reserve, or like you have to have a registration with password and everything, so people can reserve their own username. You can do it, but there can be an error where if someone if someone does a quiz, like the second quiz with your username before, then you lose your username. But otherwise, yes, you can. You can create different types of quizzes, and then you can combine them together to connect one large leaderboard, which is actually a very good use case as well, that we have seen people using. So I don't know if I have an ability to do, I can do a banner here that says, right? So this is the website that you can go through. There is a production video, like a demo video as well, that you can watch on your own pace. And to kind of bring it all up. There's also a little bit of a promotional video that we have that kind of combines the software as well. So I hope it was very helpful. I hope it gave you some new ideas. I will be very happy if you can leave me some feedback of whether you enjoyed it. What could I have talked about that would have been a little bit more interesting? But until next time, I will upload a new webinar regarding specifically gamified branded minigames very soon. So keep an eye on that as well. So if there is nothing specifically further, then thank you from my side.